with Faraz Shaukat Ali.
Good morning, I am Banduli Jayasekara. Faraz Shaukat Ali is out of Colombo. Be back with you on Monday. First of all, I would like to wish the respected and lovable Sumitra Piris a happy birthday. She is also, apart from husband Lester James, she is also a legend of Sri Lanka, and we wish Sumitra a happy birthday. As well as I like to wish on behalf of our network the dear Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe a happy birthday, and my wish and our hope is that he would, there is so much respect for him, but I hope he would give direct answers, especially in Parliament, instead of diverting, and that's really what we expect, the masses, the viewers would expect. And once again we wish him a happy birthday. Let's heat up the day today. We have two interesting personalities. One is Professor Rohan Samaraju. Good morning, Rohan.
Good morning.
And we have architect Nalaka Jai. Good morning, Nalaka.
Good morning.
The subject is, I think it's nothing like, it's not new to the English audience. It's about ECTA. Rohan, what's happening? Why are you supporting ECTA?
I don't think it's about supporting or not supporting. I think these are things that basic economics, anybody who understands what's going on in the world will have to agree that this is the way the world is moving. Countries that open up, create legal frameworks for international trade prosper. They create important jobs, they create exports, and their countries go forward. I think what we need to do, everybody in Sri Lanka who's concerned about trade agreements should look at Vietnam, which is a country that is poorer than Sri Lanka even now, which is way behind us, which entered even the general agreement, the World Trade Organization in 2006, and how far it is going. Now its exports have increased by 9 times from 2000 to 2004, whereas Sri Lanka's exports have increased only 2 times, only double.
But, I mean, like, have they signed an agreement with India, Vietnam
yes,
and India?
Vietnam is part of an agreement with India.
Similar to
Vietnam is part of ASEAN, and ASEAN has signed an agreement with India. Vietnam has signed with Japan, with Korea, with Australia, New Zealand, and they are getting into an extremely complex and, in my opinion, questionable agreement called the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which will require extensive changes to their internal laws and provisions, which are way more intrusive than the ones that we are dealing with in the case of India and Sri Lanka.
Now, like,
so these baby steps that we are taking here.
Why are you opposing this agreement, ECTA?
No,
why are you against it?
No, we are not against any liberalization procedure. What we are against is we cannot go for liberalization without the necessary legal frameworks in the country. Now, Professor Rohan Samaraju took the example of Vietnam. The Vietnam political and geopolitical conditions is completely different to Sri Lanka. Vietnam behaves as an opponent party to the Chinese government. And I am not going to discuss those things in detail. But if you look at Vietnam, they stopped the war in 1976. They concluded the war in around 1976. And from 1976 up to, I think, 2006 or something like that, they had a huge controlled economy. Under that regime, they developed all the necessary legal frameworks and then started opening. Now what we are discussing now in terms of Sri Lanka, we had a bloody war for the last 30 years and we have stopped it, we have won it just 5 years ago. Now what we need is, again, we have to make the necessary legal enactments in this country to face the...
So you mean to say if these legal enactments are made, you will support this?
Yes. What my point, what we are arguing from 2003 up to date is not to say to go against liberalization. It's because the government, whether irrespective of the government, whether it's UMP, JVP, SLFP, whatever, they reserve the right to politically fulfill certain obligations. We as professionals, we cannot say you can't do this and that, because that is not the role of the professionals. What we are saying is, let us have our legal frameworks in place. So we have found around 30 acts to be amended before we go for liberalization thing. And we respect Honorable Malik Samaravika a lot, because we are having huge dialogue with him and series of discussions, and we have submitted the documents to him to say, okay, let's have work 24/7 and develop the country from today onwards.
Rohan, are you in agreement? I mean, would you like make these changes, and what are your views on
I'm in complete agreement with him except for the word before. I think these things need to be done in parallel, because the simple answer is, he has been talking about this from 2003. I have been talking about the need to get rid of obsolete laws, liberalize our entire legal structure for a longer time than that, but it hasn't happened. So you need time pressure. You need the pressure of saying, here we have agreed to liberalize our economy. We have 2 years. These things are never implemented immediately upon signature. Even the free trade agreement with India was signed in 98, came into effect in 2000. All these things have gaps built into them. If you want, you can even put greater gaps. And during that period, yes, the pressure will be on to do the agreements, to do the mutual recognition, to recognize the qualifications in the other country, for the professional bodies on both sides to get together. You need the time pressure.
What's this talk of employment generation? You say about 10 lakhs of jobs. That's really what the government is saying.
Yes, that is indeed what they are. The way they look at this issue is reflected in the manifesto of the United National Party at the last election. Under the heading of 1 million new jobs, so Rakya Dasalaksha, you have all this trade discussion taking place there. So if we are to move to higher value, higher quality industrial and service jobs, we need to up our game in those areas. Today we have 30%, technically as much as 30% of our labor force in agriculture, but the next generation has no interest in working in these hard jobs. They have to be mechanized. We have to become more productive. I mean, throughout the economy. If you're going to play in the world economy, you need to be more productive. We need to focus on factors that will improve productivity, rather than looking after the interests of one or another special interest group, among which I will put the doctors. They are a special interest group looking after their personal interests rather than the interests of the economy as a whole.
Nalaga, you are representing the professionals as an architect. What's the problem with the doctors? Why are they so scared?
Well,
and they are opposing, they go on strike because they don't get this duty-free permit. But why are they so scared?
Well, let me tell you, I am not a doctor, neither I have anything to do with doctor profession.
But as a professional,
I being a private guy, I don't get permits as well.
Yeah.
Now this
I'm
is
talking about the doctors.
Now say the doctors, the behavior has certain amount of restrictions in terms of ECTA, because what they say is Indian system does not allow even the Indian dual citizenship holders or the Indian people who are having the outside citizenship are not allowed to practice in India. So that means that in terms of profession of doctors, the Indians have completely debarred of practicing by any other person except by Indians. So what the argument is, then if you open the gates, you are opening one way. It's not the both ways. So,
but again, now like if you look at take from our viewers, look at our masses. They want to go to a doctor. They want to get good treatment. You know this. I mean, you think our doctors are serving our people enough? I mean, let's praise the good doctors. They aren't.
I am not supposed to.
No, but
give me chance. I am not supposed to talk for and on behalf of GMO. But let me consider this. We had a bloody war of 30 years.
Yeah.
Did we have Indian doctors to serve the Sri Lankan patients and the war
Why are you so scared of India?
No. It's not Indians.
Yeah.
But I am not only talking of Indians.
Yeah.
Now their argument is we have looked after the country during the worst scenario.
Yeah.
Now looking after the country in the best scenario is nothing. So
I would say let's not play the
I don't want to get involved with GM.
No, I know. Let's not play the patriots. Rohan, anyway, there is a question from a viewer, Rohan, to you. Then the viewer is asking, what type of jobs are they hoping to create in Sri Lanka? I mean, there are several questions from the viewer. What type of jobs through the agreement?
Oh, definitely. I mean, let's just look at concrete examples. In 2002, when this discussion began, there was practically no business process outsourcing in Sri Lanka. Today we have a significant number of jobs, but these are the kinds of things that should be covered under business services, so IT and IT enabled services, so that we can attract more investment and have contractual clarity regarding those kinds of jobs: business process outsourcing, knowledge process outsourcing, maybe even architectural services being outsourced, legal services. They can make money providing architectural services to people in other countries sitting here. This is all very good, right? These are all good things, and we should have the legal framework.
There should be a good competition.
Yeah, except now that would require us to go to what is called Mode 1 architectural services, but unless the architects are open to even opening Mode 1, we can open Mode 1 while keeping Mode 4 closed.
So there are more questions, there are more questions from the viewers. They said, what should, I'll just read the questions out where both can answer. What would be the minimum salary scale if Dr. Samarjiva feels that youth are looking for, he has listened to the Sinhala program, if he feels that youth are looking for factory jobs, right, inside, why do we have such shortage in the garment industry and other BOI related factories? We'll go to that.
There are shortages, but the issue is that we have been absorbing people into government service. We have 1.4 million or 1.6 million, depending on how you count, working in the government. There's another large number running three-wheelers. These are not the most productive kinds of employment. We have to have things and even with our factories, we have to move them up the value chain. We have to have better vocational training. Now we could say that without vocational training we can't do trade. But these are things, you see, you can't do one thing and another. Public policy doesn't work that way. Public policy works in parallel. So we create the demand and then the incentives are created to improve vocational education, to do the legal reforms. Everything we put under a timetable and we get the changes done.
Now, are you scared that you'll see coconut pluckers from India coming in with this hectare?
No, we are not scared. If what the politicians,
but some people have been saying that.
No, what the politicians openly says is we have Indian labourers working in paddy fields. This is what they are saying. Now,
who are the which side? The government or the opposition or the joint opposition?
All the parties are saying the same story. Now, the question is, what we are saying is, let them come. Because if we don't have the necessary labor to reach the development goals, then we need manpower. But what's the government procedure? What's the government strategy? What's the government mechanism? What's the government policy?
What did Malik Samir tell you all? Now we all had discussions.
He has openly agreed, and what we are doing is we are really having a real progressive discussion with Honorable Malik Samaravikrama, and we are giving necessary inputs, and he has agreed. Now, even if he went out to the extent, I say he has said, I cannot achieve everything at once. What we said is, yes, we cannot achieve everything in once. Let's first handle the multi-barrels.
But Rohan, you are nodding in agreement on this, but the issue is like what the viewers are saying is that why is the Prime Minister so hard? Why can't he have an open discussion? So there is a question.
You don't have a nuanced discussion on these things. People are throwing, they're throwing the whole kitchen sink at him and at this idea. Now let's take this medical issue that you brought up earlier. Here I am reading from India's commitments in the Singapore Agreement.
Ron, I think you'll have to explain in detail. Let's go for a short break and come back. We'll be back with you in a minute. Welcome back to Newsline. We are discussing ECTA with Professor Rohan Samarjiva and architect Nalaka Jayavira. Rohan, you have
very
some
simply
figures.
Put, there's a lot of flexibility in the way these service agreements are put in, and unfortunately people are not looking at it. Now here's an example of what India has said in its agreement with Singapore. So what they're saying is, on Mode 4, which is this movement of doctors, this is with regard to medical and dental services, CPC 9312, and it says in Mode 4, unbound pending finalization of MRA. Now these are all gobbledygook. Unbound means that the agreement does not apply, and MRA means a mutual recognition agreement. So that is, they have said, until the mutual recognition agreement between the two countries about whose doctors are acceptable to Singapore and whose Singapore doctors are acceptable to India, until that is reached, the Mode 4 will not be applicable in the medical sector. This is the kind of nuanced approach that is possible in service trade agreements. And even in this much denigrated SEPA, there were provisions. The people in the IPS, Institute of Public Policy, IPS, Policy Studies, who were working on it, have reported that they actually excluded architecture from the discussion because the laws were not in place. So this is how these negotiations take place. It is always nuanced. But we are being talked, we are the people who are presenting these arguments, none of these nuances are accepted. It is like you want to bring barbers from India. Who on earth talked about bringing barbers from India? But this is this sort of broad brush, unfortunate, non-professional technical attacks that are the nature of this debate, rather than looking at the technical details.
I appreciate for having starting the discussion in that fashion by Professor Rohan Samarajiva. Now you are comparing India and Singapore Acts, India and SAICA. Now the question is, Singapore is small, but their legal system is far superior than Sri Lankan legal system. They have the provision of having the MRS, that mutual recognition agreements. The institutional framework is there. Now the question is, come back to Sri Lanka. What are the professional institutes having to recognize the MRS? We don't have a single institute. Now he says the provision can be explored. For us to explore the situation, we need to have necessary legal enactments in this country. Then he comes and the argument saying the architects has been excluded. No, first they included. We made certain amount of presentation, said please exclude. Then only it was excluded. The IPS, before, they should have then consulted us before we put in the architecture in. No, they included. After making the presentation, they excluded. That does not mean that they have studied the real economic or legal framework of this country in first, number one. They have ex parte gone ahead with liberalization, and when the people start questioning and start saying certain things, one by one they're getting excluded.
But now what's happening now, like there's a debate, there's a discussion, it's not out yet, it's not presented.
Yeah, but the question is, now take example, in any country, when we do an economic agreement like this liberalization, it takes time. The latest in New Zealand, what they say is they have taken 7 years. On the 7 years of consultation, all the professional groups will work together as a one single entity for the government or for the country. Now this is what we are doing, and we appreciate Professor Dr. Honorable Rohan Samaraji, Malik Samaravikrama.
It's time that you call professors also honorable, not only politicians.
Yes,
I think politicians are less honorable, so it's good.
Yeah,
good.
Professor,
slip of the tongue, that was good.
Professor, Honorable Minister Malik Samaravikrama's attitude and the present government attitude in terms of bringing all the professionals together and working as a one single mechanism to make sure the liberalization can take place.
But what's wrong in providing jobs for our people? No, look at the masses, they want jobs.
We have never said, that's what I said, we have never said at any given place we are against liberalization. I started saying, as professionals, we cannot stand by saying we are against liberalization or anything. I'll tell you, we started liberalization even before, just after a few months we got the independence. If I am right, Professor Rohan Samarajiva, we signed the GATT in 1948.
Yes,
I was not born.
Absolutely.
I was not born then. And then we signed the GATT in 1994, and then became a party to WTO in 1995. And then we, under the GATT and GATT, we have signed FTA with India, FTA with Pakistan, and then already in 2010, Service Sector Liberalization Agreement called SARTIS, we have signed. And the question is, we cannot say no to it, but what we are demanding is equal opportunity, equal chance, to make the necessary legal enactments to compare, not with compare apple to apple, not with apple to coconut.
I think Nalaga, I think this is an architect who should work for the Ministry of International Trade. Ron, more questions.
Thanks.
I think than being an architect. You see, and also the questions from the viewers. If they bring in high-paying jobs, right, people with high jobs, what will happen to the present BOI factory jobs, right? Will they also have to triple their salaries? And then the viewer says this will create unimaginable problems. Your views?
The issue is that every country, now just let's not talk in abstractions, but let's talk about the apparel industry. We were making simple t-shirts those days. We don't do that anymore. You move up the value chain over time. So we have to, now we are making engineered fabrics and all kinds of interesting and unusual material rather than the simple apparel. So in the same way, if you think that BOI factories have to be preserved in their current form as low labor opportunities, I don't think we are on the right path. If we are to become an upper middle income country or a rich country, we have to move up this value chain, and that change is what these agreements will do. These agreements don't provide certainty. This is not central planning where, you know, we will say we will create this many jobs at this kind of salary. They create opportunities for businessmen, for entrepreneurs, for even professionals who are certain kinds of businessmen, to take advantage of them. So for example, instead of fighting these agreements, architects could say, we would like to enter into mode 1. Mode 1 is where architects can be in Sri Lanka and provide architectural services in other countries. We would like you to postpone mode 4, subject to these legal provisions being put in. In my opinion, I would put a 2-year or 1-year time limit on that. But get into the international competition right now, rather than duck international competition in the fear of something unusual happening. Because globalization is not a risk-free activity. Globalization is about seizing opportunities. It's not about having jobs handed to you at a certain salary.
I remember the respected former member of parliament and former High Commissioner to India for Sri Lankan High Commission in India, Mangala Munising, was saying that the Indian railway budget is bigger than the total Sri Lankan budget. And so, in having said that, I want to ask Rohan, how will India benefit? Now you are talking of the benefits for Sri Lanka. How would this large country benefit from this?
India has been signing, I mean, we were right in the top of the line in terms of the free trade agreement, the goods trade. We were second in line in terms of the services, behind Singapore. But in the last 10 years, they have signed with Europe, with Korea, with ASEAN, with everybody, because they have figured out that Doha will not happen. That is, the multilateral agreement will not happen. They are working out these other agreements. I believe there are certain geopolitical considerations where, for example, when China wants to come into and engage economically, they just have to tell their companies, go, and the Chinese companies will come. The Indian companies want more of a legal framework. So what they want is, rather than just pure trade, I think they want the investment component. I think they very clearly want. And even with regard to trade or services trade agreements, this is not about increasing exports or reducing imports. This is about providing legal certainty. And once the legal certainty is provided, the Indian firms, they believe, will engage in Sri Lanka. And I think it's in Sri Lanka's interest to balance the Chinese and the Indian involvement. Don't go tip too far in any direction. Don't tip too far towards China. Don't tip too far towards India. We need to balance our relationships. That is what will be possible through these multiple trade agreements. And I must emphasize that the issue is not about a trade agreement with India. There's an agreement with China that is in the works as well. There's an agreement with all our trading partners.
So that's very interesting now. Like see, people are saying that, you know, why aren't you opposing this agreement with China, but why is only against India?
No, we as professionals, we are not opposing on a specific country. What we are opposing is have the liberalization procedure, and before that, let's have our house in order. For us to put our house in order, we have to have our legal system, whatever the.
But now you said you have had discussion. So when are they going to come out with this legal system?
It's like this. We have said, give us. On Professor Rohan Samarjiva says that he can give 2 years. What we have asked is only 6 months. We have said we are ready to work 24/7. We don't want any payments, and we will make all the necessary legal enactments. But you, as the government, should coordinate and cooperate with all the other government institutions to achieve the target.
Yeah, Rohan, what's the problem then if Nalaka is saying that?
No, this is very progressive. I mean, I was on the road when this procession of the United Professionals Against Liberalization or something took place in Eye Hospital. There were very vituperative statements made about being anti-India and selling the country in India, and the email that I get. They even published my personal information on the web because supposedly I am some bad person and they had needed to attack me. So I'm very happy to hear this very reasonable view coming from Nalaka. I mean, I believe, I have worked with him for many years. I think there are good responsible professionals, and I'm happy to hear this tone rather than that xenophobic tone that we were hearing a few weeks ago. I'm very pleased to
And
see
also
this is progress.
my final question, even I was told this joint opposition rally, they didn't speak of China, but again only on India, the joint opposition.
It's like this. We as Sri Lankans have a psychological phobia against Indians. It's because the Indian systems are so, I would say, not in good favor of us, because whatever the failures in terms of FTA has not been able to rectify to date after even 16 years in operation. So the whole question is, if we have the Indian systems not rectified to date, how can we expect then tomorrow that they will rectify?
And
Because
I'm sorry, the time is up.
Okay.
So I have to thank Rohan and Nalaka for joining this discussion. I'm sure we should take this further and maybe have a face the nation of with ECTA people who are supporting, opposing, and we have made some progress, and they are coming to some agreement. Tomorrow you will be joined by Dr. Kalana Senaratna to speak on human rights and the political situation on TV1 Newsline. Thank you very much.
Newsfirst Newsline with Faraz Shaukat Ali.